I am unashamed. What about you?
Welcome back to Unashamed.
Unashamed for Hillsdale on Friday.
Yeah.
Sign up for free.
Unashamedforhillsdale.com.
Unashamedforhillsdale.com. That's right. For free.
It's funny how Maddie puts it on the screen. We get so used to it. It's like, as soon as it's not up there.
It's like I'll
but you know,
see
as
it
Christian
every day.
always remembers things.
He does.
He's got
I
his
keep on
memory.
asking
I
the
have to
name of
take
God.
Prevagen to have a memory like yours.
I appreciate
He had a
it.
good memory.
I do. Yes,
You forgot. Now
I do pride myself in my memory.
I have a good, what's that word again? Memory.
Yeah, memory.
I forgot the word.
So I was thinking after the last podcast that John Luke started with explosive diarrhea, which it's always interesting to talk about.
It's a risky move to bring that into a
It is,
discussion like
and
this.
yet he pulled it off.
Yeah.
I was thinking about my grandkids. Their favorite game to play. They like games, Game of Life and all these, a lot of old board games that I played when I was a kid. But their favorite one, Lisa bought them a bingo game, but it's called Poop Bingo. And so it's like, and I'm usually the caller. That's my job because I don't really like to play bingo, but I don't mind calling because they get so tickled because the board is animals and then their poop. And so it's just bingo because they get the cards and the cards have the little
and educational.
Yeah, and educational because you learn what a snail, what their poop
Yeah,
looks
if you're
like.
in the woods, you need to know what kind of feces.
Exactly.
Yeah.
T-Rex. I mean, it's got everything on here. I don't know how they knew what T-Rex poop is, but they claim to. And it's got the little poop like emoji from on your phone that are the little bingo cards. So bingo, poop bingo. But I mean, that's all every night especially when we have company. They said, "Pat, can we play poop bingo?"
Speaking of T-Rex, I saw this funny video on Instagram the other day. It was this guy. You might have seen this. Might not. It's like he has this like illustration of like a T-Rex on the TV, and he's like, "Yeah, so T-Rex could see. They could see 26 to 30 miles on a clear, visible day." And the person was like, "How do you know that?" And he's like, "Because of the fossils. Because of the bones. We know that.
We know that
We know things.
Yeah.
We know that from the bones.
Like it had incredible eyesight. Yeah, because of its femur. It's long femur.
It's like femur. We can see its eyesight. Yeah.
Just trust us.
I'm still a little concerned that this is what's going on in your house. Like the poop thing is like, I feel like the whole Robertson side of the family, if you want center stage, if you have a good poop story, you do. It does seem to elevate you in the ability to get the attention of the room.
For sure.
And you guys have built a whole culture around this, which is
it's
kind of
a whole
strange.
game. Who knew there was a game out there?
Well, that's for me growing up. The Robertson side, it's all about poop, crap. Like as crude as you can be, like that's what will get you the laughs, or even just in the conversation. Whereas the other side, my mom's side, the Howard side,
they would never talk about that.
Oh, never. You don't even mention. You can't even say. Oh, you can't even
have to say toot.
You can't even acknowledge that you do fart. Like, I mean, you don't even talk about the bathroom.
Because if you brought
the
that
toilet.
up in front of Mama Joe, she would smack you down because there's a properness, and that's actually the correct way to be to our audience. I'm not saying we're doing it right.
But you do see, like in the scriptures. I mean, the scriptures do not shy away from a lot of these, what we would call crude discussions.
That's right.
And I was going to say that that's the dark humor, which we're actually going to talk about darkness today.
Yeah, we are.
But I mean, that is kind of a dark humor. But I mean, it is kind of like also part of it's so funny. I think we try to curate scripture down to we want to curate it and strip it of its kind of texture and its sting. That's one thing I really appreciate about Dr. Jackson. He talked a lot about this when we had breakfast with him. He said he was talking about 1st and 2nd Samuel and how it's such a great literary text in the scripture. He would say it's his favorite, and then some of the poetry. And he's like, yes, but some of this poetry in the scripture is very provocative, and it's very...
You read Song of Songs lately?
Oh, my gosh. I mean, or just like that story when you get to Ezekiel of the twin sisters, and you start reading through that, this is in the Bible?
Yeah.
It's actually very, very shocking to see what's in this text. And I
because how can you have a text, even written by the Holy Spirit of God through people, not be real because we're real? And I think that authenticity is there. And I thought about that in relationship to the plagues. This whole thing is, he starts out about the stench of death, because the river and all the fish died. And look, I grew up, everything stunk. around us because we fished. And so there were always parts of fish around. We cleaned fish, and maggots were just part of my childhood. Like we would have to go and dip. Dad would buy this big, like a 50-gallon barrel of cheese. Well, the first 7 or 8 days, it wasn't so bad. But imagine in our heat, and that thing sitting out in a shed. Imagine about halfway down after 2 weeks, what we're talking about here. And then my job is to go out and take a scooper and put it in one of Dad's old socks, which would have been bad enough with just the sock.
Just the sock.
Just the old, because they're too worn to do anything else with, and then hang it in a catfish trap. So everything about
the worse it stunk, that was like, okay,
the
now
better it is.
Yeah, the better
exactly,
it is.
because we're trying to draw in scavengers to then catch them, and so you see the process. So when I read a text like this, I get it. It's why I don't like to fish anymore.
Well, I think it's hard for us that when we got into the plagues, I think that's one of the most difficult things for, like you mentioned the gnats in the last episode. Like, why would the gnats or the lice be the thing that would push them over the edge? I think it's because we've read these texts as kind of disembodied stories, and we're not sitting in the actual blow of what's happening here. Which Dr. Jackson, when he talked about the stench and the smell, and like this is not rated PG. These are like, this story is a rated R story.
And and we don't, because we're Western and our houses are all nice and enclosed and we keep all the pests out and we got people come and spray our homes. But you go to Africa or go on a mission trip somewhere, you find out what flies are like.
Yeah.
When they're just, literally you're walking around and you're just, they're constantly lighting. And this was that on steroids, because obviously, remember, he picks up dust. And he just like, then everything that's dust turns into this. So it is a pestilence of, plague proportion. And I just can't imagine being covered like that. I still remember I was in the 5th grade. You talk about having a memory of this girl sitting in front of me, and she had her hair parted. I guess she had it in ponytails or something. And so you're looking at the back of her head, and every once in a while I would see something, and, it catches your attention. And I realized those are lice crossing the little part in the back of her hair. That was, I still remember that.
Yeah.
That was like 50 years ago.
I remember
the vision.
my sister getting
Did you
lice
tell?
as a
Did you
kid.
tell her that she had lice?
I stayed away from her. I didn't even.
I didn't know if you were like, hey, by the way, I'm out. I sit behind you. You have lice.
I will say, even to this day, people who get lice, like there are people who have extreme phobias of lice.
Yeah.
Jill was doing this lady's hair one time. That was this lady came to our church when we planted the church over in Monroe, which was right on the campus of ULM. So it was like half college students and then like maybe 20% homeless people. It's a church Phil took over when we left, and he preached there for I don't know how many years.
Yeah, several.
And it really turned into a homeless ministry at the end. But I remember the first lady, the homeless lady that came in, we're still friends with her, talk to her to this day. She's been to our house many times, had dinner with us, and she's I love this lady. We were able to baptize her into Christ, and now she's not homeless anymore, by the way. But Jill was doing her hair. She's at the house, and all of a sudden Jill looks, and it's just, crawling
teeming
with lice.
Yeah.
And Jill's got her shears and the whole thing. And she's just like, okay, don't move, but you have a head full of lice. And so Jill does her hair, but then Jill takes all of her equipment and doesn't clean it. She throws it in the woods. She's so afraid of the lice. So Jill would have been and then we got
you can sterilize it, Jill. You don't have to
you don't have to throw away a pair of metal shears. Lice don't live on metal shears.
I wish when I thought of lice, I think about this commandment. But you know the scene in Billy Madison when he's at the school, and he is I think he dumped salt or something. But then he has I guess none of y'all got the reference, so that was cool. But it's this scene where he has just a pile of.
Is this the new one or the old one?
No, Billy Madison, not Happy Gilmore.
Okay, there's a new. Yeah, I get confused.
The new
with all
Happy
Adam
Gilmore, not
Sandler
that
movies.
one.
Billy Madison when he goes back to school.
Yeah, but it's Adam Sandler, right?
Yeah.
I'll have to. That's our generation.
I'll show you the scene later. It's hilarious.
Well, we're moving out of
somebody got that.
Somebody got that. Somebody there. Somebody grew up in the 90s. I grew up in the 90s. I should get any Adam Sandler reference, but
I do SNL stuff all the time in preaching, and nobody knows what I'm talking about because
Well, the
it's like
problem
from
with Adam Sandler
30 years ago.
is that all his movies are the same. I mean, they're hilarious, but like it's like I have a hard time.
Then you don't know one from
I'm
the
like,
other.
What there was like Waterboy, like what
Happy Gilmore, Waterboy,
It's all
Billy
they're
Madison.
all it's the same kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, he's brilliant. He
It's
did
the
made a
same
lot of money off it.
character, basically.
But we're kind of like coming at the end of these plagues. Today we're actually in lecture 5, which is the Passover. We may get into the parting of the Red Sea moment. There's some things happening here, but we're nearing the end of the plagues, and what Moses or God's been doing through Moses is he's been ramping up, ratcheting up the pressure. To your point in the last podcast, these plagues, they seem to be kind of moving inward. I think the word we landed on was encroachment. It's like they're moving. This manifest presence of God for the Egyptians is moving in closer and closer to now. It was out here at the Nile River, and then it was the frogs, and it was the lice now I'm on your body, I'm on your person, and now we're moving into this final plague, which is.
And remember, the death and the proximity was the way he described it, then the separation. So until the Israelites, the first 3 or so are for them as well, because they're going through it. I mean, they're all right there in the same situation. So you get death, proximity, then you get into the separation, which really begins to show you God's true power. Because then when you can have people living in the same space, in essence, and yet this group is unaffected and this group is affected, then you're seeing the actual. To me, that's when like God takes.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, he's taking it up.
It's like a
notch.
natural disaster hits your town.
Yeah.
And everybody that's on your team doesn't get affected by it.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, and so all of a sudden you're starting to see that from the livestock going forward. And also, I've always heard, and I think it's true, because he said there's different ways people categorize these plagues, but it definitely is now you're seeing having the whole economic. Because now it's the locusts and all the crops, and so first it was the river. So now it's like hitting everything that they would have thought as their gods, or now in submission because they have no control anymore,
and their livelihood,
their livelihood, and so the people, as we know, and we're just kind of following the narrative, but the people in the situation now are starting to like cry out the Egyptian people to Pharaoh, just stop, get rid of relent, get these people out. So now it's like in our current political world, it's like we have a poll for everything. The polls are saying 90% of the people are saying that we talk about 80-20 issue. This is a 90-10 issue now. Everybody's saying get rid of these people because we're suffering as a result, and they're not. And so, they're noticing. And I thought he brought a really interesting thought that I never thought before about people having the option. Because now, as we get into these last handful of plagues, God telegraphs it. He lets them know the day before he's going to do it. So it's like tomorrow this is going to happen. So even the Egyptians have an opportunity to get out of harm's way. In other words, if you bring in if you bring in your servants and you bring in your livestock, then you would be spared. And so he was assuming that a lot of them probably did it.
Yeah.
In other words, they're like, why should we suffer?
Right.
And so that's probably the ragtag group that winds up following them out. They're like, hey, this God is bigger.
Well, that's a big eschatological point too, that if you look at the New Testament, and all through the New Testament, and even in the ending of the entire Bible in Revelation 21 and 22, what you see in the end is a multi-ethnic kingdom of the nations all coming together to worship the one true God. You see it in the prophets. Isaiah chapter 2 paints the picture of different nations, not just Israel, but other nations coming up. So even in the formation of Israel in the Exodus, right, because you're at the very beginning of the history of Israel, you see non-Israel participating in deliverance.
Right.
You think about Pharaoh's daughter, which I thought was such a great point that I'd never considered. I'd read the ragtag line about a great multitude, meaning that there were people outside of Israel that went with Israel that were Egyptians,
right? Which
is crazy to think about, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that Israel was God's covenant people. Well, yeah, and there's others coming into that relationship that were not of Israel; they were of Egypt. But through their repentance, they were coming in. And then he made the reference that in I forgot where he referenced it, that later on in Scripture, that Pharaoh's daughter was included in the lineage.
It was in 1 Samuel, I think.
I mean, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Pharaoh's daughter is in the genealogy
Yeah.
of Israel.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, I feel like that even ties into Peter with the dream with Cornelius.
Bithia.
Oh,
The second
100%.
Samuel.
Because the
Yeah.
dream, even when Peter, our families made a whole like business on Duck Commander, and you remember when Phil had that, he would do his speech, and he would get to that Acts. Where is it in Acts? Is it Acts?
Acts 10.
Acts 10, where Peter has the vision, and the sheet comes down from heaven, and there's all these
Like a movie screen.
like a movie screen, as Phil would say, and there's all these unclean animals on it, and he says, "Arise, kill, and eat." And Phil's joke was, "Hey, we're just following the commands of the Almighty.
Orders from headquarters,
Orders
boys.
from headquarters, boys." But that whole vision that Peter
It's
had
about people,
was don't call anything that I've called clean unclean.
Yeah.
Talking about Gentiles.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing, even in the story of Exodus, and you're seeing God's heart for the nations, and ultimately how He will accomplish this multi-ethnic kingdom that all the nations eventually will serve Him.
Yeah.
They will come into the temple and they will worship Him in His temple.
Yeah. So a reminder, if you want to take the course with us, if you're new to the podcast, you can sign up at unashamedforhillsdale.com because we'd love to have you along.
Yeah, and I want to just set something up real quick, Al, because I know you had talked about this, but I want to get there real quick because we didn't get quite to the 10th plague, which is the Passover. The 8th plague was the locusts, and again, even in that 8th plague, you see again that the name of God is kind of the intention of making His name known. Because at the very beginning of chapter 10, the Lord said to Moses, "Go into Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart, and that the heart of his servants, that I may show these signs of mine among them." And again, it's this idea that as He unfolds His power, that this power would make anybody in their right mind like submit, but God's got an intention here that I don't want that yet.
Yeah.
Like I want to tease this story out.
Yeah.
And so right before you get to this last plague, which is kind of the final, it's the bad one.
Yeah.
It's the one that,
and by the way, the one he mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah.
Again, that he loomed that way back when. If we don't do this, the day of death is coming. I mean, it's like he gives it's going to happen. And another thing about the locust, he made a reference I hadn't thought about before. It was an east wind, which would have been coming from Israel, which is interesting. That even in the little details, you still see this idea that judgment is going to come from Israel and the east wind for the Red Sea.
Because it's the east wind and they died in the Red Sea.
Right.
Yeah. So
exactly.
kind of the foreshadowing.
Yeah. Just those little teasers that you get.
Yeah.
well, I was going to say, when you get to this 9th plague, which I want to talk a little bit about this darkness before you get into it, because I know you guys have some thoughts on that.
Yeah.
This one, Pharaoh's like, okay. You see kind of the whole apparatus of God, what He's doing here, because this is the one where Pharaoh's like, just go. But then God said, no, not yet. And he just hardens that heart a little bit more. Says, no, not. We're not ready yet. I know you're going to fold under my power, but I don't want you to fold yet. We're not quite there, because we're going to build this story out to the end, and you see God ratchet that up. But I wanted to.
It's so funny when you just did that. You remind me so much of Jan. You had that that's the way she had that hand out there, and you look.
She's always moving.
You had that little look like your mom, because she was an amazing Bible student and Bible teacher. And when I was a kid, she's like, she could walk on water. But anyway, I had that's a fourth wall moment like you had in the last podcast. Hey, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
So this darkness, it struck me. One is, I had never thought of, he said his opinion is, because I always thought, like everybody else, one is foreshadowing death for sure. But the idea about it being Sheol, which is this idea of this, of a Hebrew idea of purgatory or hell or Hades later in the Greek, this place of just darkness and non-existence, but existence. I mean, I'm aware, but I can feel it. But it was 3 days, which 3 days just kept coming up over and over. And I couldn't help but think about the ultimate picture of the 3 days. Remember Jesus and the going in to preach to the spirits, for first.
Long ago.
Exactly. And so it's interesting that it keeps coming back to 3 days, because remember, that's what they said. They only were going to go out to worship God for 3 days, and they were coming back. That's what Pharaoh's thinking the whole time, even after they leave. And then he kind of realized after 3 days, it's like, well, they ain't coming back. So then he chases them. But this 3 days in darkness at such a point, it says in the NIV, stretch out your hand toward the sky so that the darkness will spread over Egypt. And remember, it doesn't affect the Israelites. They still got light somehow. Darkness that can be felt. And that's all it really says in the text. And he took that to mean it was a visitation of what it would be like in total isolation and darkness, as in Sheol, like you had died.
Yeah.
Like you had it was that much of a clingy. And I thought back to what we mentioned in the last podcast about when you go places and it feels so strongly like something terrible happened here, or, whatever the case may be. And so you have these little, through your life, you have these little moments where you kind of just for a second sense something like that. But
have you guys ever passed out before from anything? That just happened to me recently. I had my blood drawn, and I've never passed out before.
I pass out every time my blood is drawn, or I get a shot.
Oh yeah, John Luke is notorious for that.
Every time.
Well, I didn't know that was a thing that I had. Like it's like an actual thing called vago. I forgot. There's a technical name for it.
Yeah, you've had your whole life,
I have
right?
it. Whole life.
Well, I was sitting there.
If you see blood, you pass out, don't you? Or is that Johnny?
No, that's not me.
Okay.
No.
That's your grandpa. I think it's Johnny that if he sees blood,
if I
he passes.
see my own blood, like especially like a needle, like that will make me woozy, but not like really just like the thought of the needle is what just gets me.
It's a
every
weird
time.
phenomenon. I didn't know I had this issue or condition or whatever it's called, I'd be curious if you had this experience. So I go in to get my blood drawn, and I'm sitting up in the chair, and I got my right arm out, which is where they're drawing the blood from. I instinctively was like, I'm not going to look. So I guess maybe I did know like something about this I don't want to watch. And I turn my head, and they begin the process, and I felt like a little prick, and then like the guy's like, sir, Mr. Dasher, and he's like waking me up. But there was a moment, like, I can't really describe it other than, like, I've never in my entire life felt this kind of fear. It was the weirdest sensation, but it was dark.
As you were losing the consciousness.
As I was coming out of it.
Okay.
Because I don't remember going into it.
Okay.
It was weird. I've never had anything. You were out for like 30 seconds, but it was like, there was a moment where I had no context for any. It was just like a free for all. Like I didn't know who I was. I didn't know. I was existing, but I was like in complete and utter fear. I'd never felt fear like that before. It was the weirdest sensation. And when I finally came to, like, I had to like bring myself into like I was like, whoa. That was, I don't know what just happened. It was scary. Do you experience kind of a fear associated with it?
Yeah.
It's
especially at first, like when I was younger, when it first started happening, like, because there's that moment where you like know you're passing out and then it goes dark, but you wake up almost instantaneously. Like it's only a few seconds, but there's that like time period where it's like your brain is off, but you're aware of it. And it's freaky.
But I thought about hell because I thought about because I thought, the darkness of hell, the isolation, the lack of context, and everything that the light brings is context. And so another sensation that we've all probably experienced is you wake up in a hotel somewhere, you're super tired, and you're like, it's all dark, and you have no idea where you're at.
It takes a minute. Now that happens to me.
And you're like literally like, oh my gosh, where am I?
I have to wait. Like, no, where?
You see that sliver of light under the door.
You're like, this is my wife. Okay, okay, we're good.
And I think that's kind of the idea here. Yeah. You have no context for anything, and so it is a fear, and it is this is a prototype.
And we're really not made for darkness. I mean, we're made for light. Like like we're always drawn to light. And I remember as a kid, even we live out in the woods, and now I realize it was the safest place we could ever be. But I never felt safe when I was going house to house. Yeah, as a kid, you're running over there and it's dark, and you're thinking something's going to jump out and grab you, but I realize now I was in the safest place. I'm much more dangerous in a neighborhood in town than I would be there. But it's just that we're not made for that. We're not made for dark. We're made to see. We're made to, for light.
Well, I'm thinking about that passage in, is it 1st or 2nd Thessalonians? It says, "Will be shut out from the presence of the Lord on the day that He comes to be marveled at among the saints." And so the picture of hell is separation from the presence, particularly separation from the ability to marvel at his presence.
Right.
And then and then Jesus is compared to the light. This is the imagery of light. Like light brings in illumination, context.
Light, life, and love. The three things from the book of John. I mean, that are represented.
You're seeing the opposite of the kingdom in here,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's an accident
Right.
that darkness precedes the ultimate punishment,
Right.
which is the ultimate darkness, which is death itself.
And plus, this is 3 days.
Yeah.
So, like, people try to explain, like, oh, this is an eclipse, it was this, that, and that. But this is 3 days of utter darkness, isolating, utter darkness. And so, whatever it was terrifying.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, he finally, this moved the needle for Pharaoh.
Well, and this was one that was directly against their main god, Ra, the sun god. Like, God has control over the sun and light. And it also, the Egyptians had a similar view of Sheol as well, of like when you would die, you would go into this period of like darkness before you kind of like moved on. So for the Egyptians, especially for like the hyper spiritual Egyptians, they're probably like, we're in Sheol now.
Yeah.
Like, we're there.
That's a good point.
We've died.
Yeah. We're screwed. This is over. Yeah. Our sun god is gone. Yeah. I hadn't even thought about that. Again, this trumping of the god. So it definitely was a foreshadow then, I think, to the 10th plague, which is probably what we need to transition to.
I have one note before we talk about that, just about the context of Egypt and the Israelites at this time. We've been talking about like the last couple of podcasts of like how can Pharaoh and the Egyptians like see these things and not turn to God? Like he saw the power of God, but he didn't turn. But to just like give you context for the arrogance and the pride of the Egyptians, they were the number one superpower at this time.
Yeah.
This was like a lot of people scholars think this is about 1200 BC. Ramses II is like who's attributed a lot of the times. And it could have been that or it could have been earlier. But Egypt at the time, the pyramids were minimum over 1,000 years old at this point.
Right.
And that was just one of the monuments. Like they
were very advanced.
They were sprawled. They had these massive statues. They
mathematicians,
were
all this stuff. Yeah.
They were rerouting the Nile. Like they had full control over their whole environment. They were the number one like armies. They had political power. They had all the things and had that for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So for them, like I was thinking about this, like for them, I was thinking about when I was like 12 years old and I went to New York for the first time and going from like here, like West Monroe, Louisiana to like New York and looking at the skyscrapers.
New York City.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, what people can do anything. Like looking at these skyscrapers, I feel so tiny.
Yeah.
And like, that's how Moses had to feel coming back into this. And like the Egyptian, especially the Pharaoh seeing himself as the literal god of the number one superpower, probably the most powerful man on the planet at this time, or at least in that area.
Yeah.
Like he did, even though he saw the power of God, he still thought we are over this. We are still better than this.
Have y'all ever been to Egypt?
No.
So Lisa and I just signed up this last month. They do these river cruises, and we've done a couple of them in Europe, but we're doing the Nile River, which I'm super excited about in 27. Yeah, to literally go and stop off at all the places.
Make sure you check with Maddie on your schedule and all
that.
We'll do
some live podcasts, Maddie.
Well,
here's Al in remote at the pyramid.
You were when we went to Rome, we had this same sensation where we were in Rome, and one of the guys that was with us was like, it's funny. Like you can imagine if you arrived in Rome in its heyday, because Rome was also a world superpower in its time that was an advanced civilization.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, you look at that Colosseum as a great example. This thing is massive.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not like chump change. This is not like, this is something we would, even today, we would think, wow, that's impressive.
We marveled.
We still are.
Yeah.
And see it and like, wow.
You built giant stadium. You're like, wow, that's incredible. Like we did that, right?
A couple of thousand years ago.
They did it without any
cranes.
Cranes.
And,
I mean, and they
yeah.
did it in a relatively short period of time. And so we were talking about if some guy comes in from a mud hut from Africa, he's like, I've been living in a mud hut in Africa, and he arrives in Rome, and then and he's looking around, and they're like, Caesar is God. He's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yep.
I get it.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, he's
Yep.
God. And I think that's the same thing here.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so it's funny that how God's kingdom will break into these powers and will just eviscerate worldly powers. I mean, he always does when these worldly powers will come against him. Now, it's going to happen, but like that's why our allegiance primarily is to the kingdom of God, because His kingdom can't be shaken or destroyed. But we move into
Well,
this.
think about how disorienting it'd be for the mud hut person showing up to Rome and then seeing Caesar's God, and then Caesar just gets destroyed by all these plagues, and he's probably like,
Wait, what?
The wrong king.
"Wait, what is happening?"
Well, Rome did fall,
And they did fall.
Rome did fall.
Yeah.
Under
Remember we talked about when we were in the Coliseum and somebody's put a cross up there, and I don't know how long it's been there. It's a wooden cross, and we were made the point. You're like, yeah, look what endured. Like the Coliseum was there in ruins.
The best part was when Phil, totally unplanned, he's filming, and so he got the camera on, and he's like, and there's some line like basically all empires will fall, against the kingdom or something like that. But it was something about empires falling, and nobody can stand or something like that. There's a guy literally like walking behind Phil like a tourist, and he just falls down as soon as Phil says, and no man can stand. And this guy like just falls.
And it captured it on camera. You just had to be walking by.
Awesome.
Don't forget to sign up and take our course if you haven't done so yet. Unashamedforhillsdale.com.
So we enter this 10th plague here, and this is the one that hits home because this is the one where God's he's gonna take some lives now.
And by the way, to me, this plague obviously is the one that finally breaks the cycle and gets them out. But this particular thing is the reason why Exodus, according to Dr. Jackson, and I think we would agree, is one of the most important books in the entire Bible, because this particular image is going to take us all the way to Christ, the blood on the door, the sacrifice of the lamb, the whole concept of Passover, and of course his last night, which was the last Passover ever needed, because he was the ultimate sacrifice. So to me, this is why this whole thing is so important. I mean, this
is the reason why God hardened Pharaoh's heart.
Yeah.
It's for this moment, because he says in 11 verse 9, then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh, because this is after the threat of the 10th plague, Pharaoh will not listen to you. And he's going to say, why won't he listen? Why has God hardened his heart? And he tells us that my wonders may be multiplied in the land of Egypt.
Yeah.
I mean, think about what he's saying there.
Yeah.
The reason why I don't want him to listen is because I'm trying to crank these wonders up. You know what I mean? I'm trying to expand. I'm going to multiply my wonders in the land of Egypt. And the reason why is because I want people to be talking about this for the rest of history. And so Moses and Aaron did all these wonders before Pharaoh, and the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the people of Israel go out of his land. And then we enter into this moment of the Passover.
And you find out later, not necessarily here as much, but you find out later there's, around a Passover meal, there's everything has a symbolic presence of something represented in coming out of Egypt. The tears of this, and I don't have the history of it, but I've been where people do a Passover. Have you ever attended one of those where they do a Passover
meal? Yeah,
and you go through all the elements, and everything had a symbolic meaning. But the bottom line was, for this angel of death, like, just imagine that, like, it's coming across this nation, and as this happens, all these firstborn, animal and human, are dying in one evening. I mean, you talk about a slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
And, the idea here is there's such a wail of sorrow that everybody, all of a sudden, every home is affected in a nation. And as John Lou pointed out, the most powerful nation, in one evening. I mean, you talk about a night to remember or forget. And all of Israel is spared because they had done exactly what God said, and the blood from the sacrifice, that they would eat the whole thing.
Which that was an interesting point,
Yeah.
right? This is not typically in the sacrifice, you're not eating if you're sacrificing it, you're not eating it.
Right.
I don't know if he made this point, but I thought about this. I thought about this point. Why did they not? Why did they eat the sacrifice?
Yeah, because I was reading that too. Because I always just think about the Passover of just the blood on the doorpost, but I forget about them eating the.
I thought it was because they're fixing to hit the road and they needed a meal.
That's all that
I mean, in a practical sense, there may be more that you're thinking. But
this is what I think is happening here.
this is like getting a Happy Meal on the way out of town, right?
So our church, we do the Lord's Supper, aka the Eucharist, aka the communion. We participate,
And there's no doubt there's some tie-in there.
There's tie-in because yes, you think about like when Jesus gives the Last Supper. When he does it around the Passover meal, and so
he used that image: eat my flesh, drink my blood. Yeah.
That's why we. Do you remember when we were growing up? You didn't grow up in the churches that we grew, but you remember what was interesting about the bread that we would eat every Sunday?
Unleavened.
Unleavened. It was unleavened bread.
Yeah.
Because you're going back to this Exodus moment. Yeah. So that was a big deal.
Because that was what they did. They had the unleavened.
Your bread better not be fluffy. Now our church now we're not as hardcore. Sometimes they bring in fluffy bread. I'm like, that's not biblical.
Shame. I know your name.
So the bread would be that. It would be like
that's the one legalistic thing I'm holding on to. The bread should not be fluffy.
No, it should not be fluffy, and it should not have salt on it. So like we would have.
Can it have salt?
It can have salt. If you're gonna eat
it
you
have
just
salt.
don't make it
cannot
fluffy.
have salt either.
It can.
You don't put saltine crackers. They're like saltine crackers without the salt.
Yeah.
And so that's what we would take as our communion,
right.
and then we had the grape juice, which probably should have been wine, but we didn't believe in drinking wine,
right.
so we had non-alcoholic. Yeah. But
because the wine in the Bible wasn't real wine,
that wasn't real wine. That was not fermented according to what we. We're digressing here. But
wait, is that a thing? I've never heard that.
Oh yeah.
To digress, I went to a church that did serve wine, and I was like, wow, they're so biblical. But then it was fluffy bread. I was like, God, that they had one canceled out. Doesn't count.
Cancels out.
Neutral.
So when you think about this, though, this is what's happening. I think that when you take the communion, when you participate in the Eucharist, the imagery there, whether you are Catholic or Protestant, I mean, one believes this is like really happening.
Yeah,
one group
it
believes
really transforms.
But the idea of transubstantiation is there's some truth in this, right?
Yeah.
Wherever you land on this, but I'm taking in the elements. And then they're being transformed, right? And so, like that is so. The role of the priest is to administer the communion, and then the role of the priest is simply to be Eucharistic, to take in the world, and then turn it back into praise to God. And so there's this transformation. So anytime you eat, I mean, I watched you eat breakfast the other day. I was like, my gosh. But you're you were very hungry. But you're taking the baleadas from the restaurant, and now the baleadas that you ate, it was transformed into your body. Think about that.
Yeah.
And so it's
and into the toilet.
Go back to where it all started.
Back to where we started.
So it's a priestly duty to actually participate in this and to administer, and also to that transformation, right? And so when you get into the establishment of the priesthood, the tribe of Levi, Aaron's going to be the first priest and the high priest, and then they'll have this whole like system. But they were the ones that got to eat what was sacrificed. They did eat it.
Yeah.
I mean, like when you read the New Testament, they would take the sacrifices, and that's what they ate.
Right.
And so I think what's happening here is a couple things. One, we're reenacting, or it was a precursor for the Lord's Supper. Obviously, the blood of the Lamb, all of that is foreshadowing Christ being the blood of the Lamb. But it's also foreshadowing that we are going to be the priests. We are the priesthood of believers, because in the sacrifice that we're making, we're also eating that sacrifice. And so what's
that's how the priest ate.
Yeah.
That's how they ate, right?
all through their time, because that's what they did. That's how they got their sustenance.
So in this moment, Israel is a priesthood.
Exactly. And they're experiencing now freedom, because this is the thing that finally releases them from the tyranny. Because now they're going to.
Where's the in Peter? I wanted to read that verse that you are a chosen race, a royal,
1 Peter 2:4,
a royal priesthood.
And
that language is centered around the temple of God. That we are His temple. That you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, that we're going to see this. This is going to
People
come.
belonging to God.
People
he said,
again, manifest presence.
Right.
What's happening? What is Israel here? A people belonging to God.
Look, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness and into his wonderful light.
Darkness.
Darkness.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
the idea there.
That's
Wow.
crazy.
Very good.
Have y'all ever heard before? Because he talked about, and he actually made this point pretty strong, but about how the like rabbinic traditions believe that Pharaoh actually was a firstborn son. Had y'all heard that before?
I had not.
I had not heard that.
And because it's mentioned that even his firstborn son would die, but I never thought about him being a
Him
firstborn.
being the firstborn.
and then, but in essence, being spared the last plague to experience exactly as you mentioned the wonders of God. And I had never thought about that.
Yeah,
before.
because you read about it,
and he probably would have been the firstborn if he was if he was the Pharaoh, I would think.
Yeah, well, because you read it and, you read God and hardening Pharaoh's heart, and so you kind of are like, well, why wasn't God merciful to Pharaoh? But then you learn that Pharaoh was the firstborn son, or at least that's what tradition believes,
Right.
and he was spared. So it's a pretty, I've never thought about Pharaoh
Only
being the firstborn son,
only
so.
then to choose his own plague.
Yeah.
Because since he doesn't relent and he chases them after the 3 days, in essence, that's why he died,
But the promise of
Red
God
Sea.
there was, fear not, stand firm, for the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you. All you got to do is shut up. That's my translation at the end. All you have to do is just be silent. And so you see this coming into the Red Sea moment. I mean, think about if you experienced that type of tragedy, calamity at this is coming from the hand of your adversary,
Right.
the person that you're fighting against. I think that at that moment I'm like I'm done.
Yeah.
You win. And Pharaoh tried that, but I think, again, God's still not done with this whole thing. He's again going to harden his heart one more time. So because it says here that he, in verse 17, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians. And the reason why is so that they shall go after them, and I will get glory over Pharaoh and all of his hosts, his chariots, and his horsemen. So you see the intention of God here is that God's going to get his glory.
Yeah.
And the way he's going to get that glory is he's about, this has all been like a process of, I want to say becoming, but it's the opposite. It's like a process of death. And then and even the death of the firstborn is not the end of it. I mean, the end of the story here, at least with Egypt, is they are completely annihilated. The Red Sea just closes in on them and kills them. But
And it was done, John Luke made a really good point earlier, this is done to the most powerful military on earth by a people, but not really by the people, but by a people that are generational in slavery. So there's no military training in Israel.
Right.
The Israelites, they've been generational. They've been building, pyramids or something. They've been making straw, making bricks. And so it's not it had to be the hand of God because these people couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of even a foreshadow to when they go and they conquer Canaan. And he's like, I want you to know it's still not by your force, it's by my force. It's by my hand that this is going to happen. So I love that because the idea is sometimes, we're in America and we say we got the most powerful military on earth, which we do. Technology-wise, all these different things, there's been world wars that are fought, but it's easy to then to be thinking we're the force.
Right.
It's us.
Yeah.
We don't need God. We've got the most powerful military in the world.
And I think the even push the intention of God further into this is that he is saying that he wants his glory out of this, but then he almost I think dials in even deeper of his intention, which we've already talked about in the podcast. But listen to how he ends right before the parting of the Red Sea. He says that thing that I'm going to get glory over Pharaoh and all of his hosts, and the Egyptians shall know that I am Yahweh, that they would know the name of God when I get glory over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. So when this consummation over evil happens, then people are going to be like, whoa, Yahweh.
Yeah.
They're going to know his name.
Yeah.
They're going to know the name of God.
And the Egyptians even tithed to Yahweh. Remember, because when the people were there, they're like, we will give you
They plundered.
Gold.
The Egyptians,
They plundered
they were
just
plundered.
to leave.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like, we'll give you gold, we'll give you jewels. Well, what were they doing? They were actually giving it to God, because they were saying, if you will just leave, we will give you all of our stuff.
Right.
And so that's how they plundered the country, literally, because they were just saying, leave, please leave. You know, you can imagine, because they had experienced all this death, and everybody's lost their firstborn and their animals, and all this happens. They're like, just get them out of here. And what's fascinating is 3 days go by. Pharaoh realizes, when you get into chapter 12, 3 days go by, and then he has another change of heart and decides, nope, they're not coming back, so we got to go get them. And immediately when the people see him coming, because you imagine you're out on this plane or whatever, and you can see the dust probably coming, that they're coming after us. And immediately they're like, why did you bring us out here to die? Is there not enough graves in it? I mean, it took 3 days. 3 days, again, 3 days, you know, and I've said this many times before, and I think about 3 days, I can't help but think about Judas and Peter, because the difference in the two is one waited 3 days until Jesus was resurrected, and then he helped change the world. I mean, he unlocked the keys to the kingdom, first gospel sermon to the Jews, the Gentile. The other one took his life before the 3 days.
And what was the difference? One repented.
One repented.
That's
and
the
one
only
didn't.
difference.
That's the only difference.
One repented.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I thought about that with 3 days. That becomes a crucial time. And I used it all the time when we talk to people, individuals or couples, about, can you give it 3 days? Can we pray about this for 3 days before we make this call that I'm telling you is going to be a bad call?
Was it in this podcast or the last one that I talked about the Genesis 15, the one-way covenant? I know I can't remember which one, but that was the last podcast. This one. But so to your point, you're seeing here the belligerent disobedience of Israel. You're seeing the fact that if this covenant depends on Israel, well, it's not going to work out well, because you just experienced 10 incredible plagues, which you were spared from the last 7 of, and now you're begging to go back under the control of the one that is being dominated by Yahweh. Like, what's wrong with you people, right?
Yep.
And so again, the covenant cannot depend on them. As I mentioned that Genesis 15 story, where the cloud, which represents the presence of God, when he made the covenant with Abram, and he said, if any of us break this covenant, may this happen to me. And the cloud alone, the smoke moves through the animals that were cut in half in Genesis 15. Well, what's interesting is when they get to this Red Sea moment, and you see that same belligerence of, but God has made a covenant with them.
Yeah.
And he's told them, what did he said, this day I'm going to deliver you.
And he's going to ratify it on Mount Sinai with the fire and the smoke and all the same
smoke
stuff.
shows up there, but the smoke actually shows up also right here in this text, verse 19. The angel of God, who was going before the host of Israel, moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them, coming between the host of Egypt and the host of Israel.
Yeah.
And there was a cloud, and there was darkness, and it lit up the night without one coming near the other. So God's presence, his manifest presence, what's his name? Yahweh. What was it again?
I will be there, howsoever I will be there.
I don't know why I can't remember that. He can remember it. I will be there.
'Cause he's got a good memory.
He's got a good memory, this guy. But that's showing up.
Yeah.
He's showing up here.
Yeah.
God's presence is moving in, and that presence is going to, liberate one, and it's going to evaporate the other.
Exactly, which becomes the ultimate end. Don't forget to sign up, take the course, unashamedforhillsdale.com. So we're almost out of time. So that gets us to the point of the Red Sea, which, obviously that's what happened. You just described it beautifully. And so when they come out of the other side, you get to Exodus 15, there's this song of victory.
And then everything's good from there on out.
Until we turn that page, which we will do on the next podcast, because we're going to get to Sinai, which is a very scary moment, but it's also a very glorious moment.
Yeah.
When we get into the law and the Ten Commandments and everything after that. So we'll tackle it next time.
Join us every Friday for Unashamed Academy powered by Hillsdale College. Make sure to go to unashamedforhillsdale.com and sign up. It's no cost to you. That's unashamedforhillsdale.com. And don't miss an episode of the Unashamed podcast by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click the little bell and choose all notifications to watch every episode.